Hello and welcome to Talk of the Town. I'm Michael Jacobi. Delighted, my guest today is a former head coach of the 49ers, head coach of the Detroit Lions, University of California, the proud father of the relay company members too.
Yeah.
Steve Mariucci.
Yeah, hi, Mike.
How are
Thanks
you,
for having me on. Yeah, good to be
Delighted
here.
to have you here. What you don't know is when we go to post on this, I'm going to play the music from your boys' band.
Really?
Yeah.
Will they get residuals?
I hope they do.
Okay.
They're no fool. That's the first thing. That's the first thing they'll say. Dad, what are you doing?
They got a check from the NCAA or CBS or whoever it was. Somebody in college football was playing their jingles before games, in and out of breaks and all that. And all of a sudden, a check shows up in the mail. It's kind of funny.
They may be the only people that ever got a check.
Well, it wasn't much.
Go figure. And also should point out, obviously, for the last 10 years, an analyst for the NFL Network. Mm-hmm. I must tell you, my friend.
That is the longest I've ever held a job.
That's right.
10 years.
You're
You're never anywhere for 10 years in coaching.
You know the story when Joe Torre took over the Yankees and he said to Steinbrenner, "Where should I look to buy a house?" And Steinbrenner said, "You ought to rent," which sums up coaching. I have said, I've been said to me when I told friends that I was doing this interview from my good buddy Mark Purdy, John Poach, who's a good friend of yours, Gene Blair, they said, "You're the greatest guy and the greatest interview in the world."
Yeah.
And I said, even more accessible than Harbaugh. They went, "Oh, let's go somewhere in between."
Well, thanks.
So I'm delighted to have you here. All right, Ironweed, Michigan.
Iron Mountain, Michigan.
Iron Mountain. We'll tell Wikipedia they're wrong.
There's no weed.
Okay, that's why you moved.
That I know.
That's funny because my dad was born in Ironwood.
See, there's Iron River, Ironwood, there's Iron Mountain, there's no Iron Weed. And Iron Mountain, though, this is all in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, right? Actually, Iron Mountain's on the Wisconsin border. That's why everybody from my hometown would be Packer fans, 100 miles north of Green Bay, Wisconsin, not necessarily Detroit fans, because that's 500 miles. Okay. Michigan's a big state. Yeah. And you know what? They had snow, 2 inches of snow a couple days ago up there.
Really?
Yeah. Middle of October.
My God, that makes that.
I miss that.
That makes that punt snap a little slippery. But we're not going there. Hey, tell me, growing up in there, so the first pro game you went to was with your dad at Green Bay or at Old Tiger Stadium?
Yeah, no, I never went to Tiger Stadium down there. We always went to Green Bay because it was closer. But, I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, growing up as becoming a football fan, but I was a Packer fan. Okay. And that was the Lombardi days.
Sure.
So it was an easy dynasty to start latching your interest to. And we didn't go to any regular season game. We couldn't afford to go to a game. We went to 2 preseason games. I remember one rained. But then we would go to training camp. You know how many fans go to Packer training camp and watch? And geez, I remember I got photographs of me getting an autograph, from Bart Starr and Willie Wood and Lionel Aldridge and Herb Adderley and Jimmy Taylor and all those guys, and I became a football and a Packer fan real quick. I still talk to some of those guys today. Bart Starr's not doing very well.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Health-wise, but he's going to try to get back for Thanksgiving night, when they put Brett Favre up in the Ring of Honor and retire his jersey. Bart's going to try to make it back. So we're all praying that he had a couple strokes and he was my hero. He was my idol growing up. Gentleman.
Did your dad play ball?
My dad went to Michigan State, on the GI Bill. He was a World War II vet, and he was a boxer and a wrestler at Michigan State.
Really?
Yeah, he was a 2-sport guy there, and he coached. Then he coached wrestling in the Upper Peninsula for a lot of years, and so he was not a football player, but he was an athlete and a coach, and so I kind of grew up in that environment. And
now, did you wrestle?
Oh yeah, he made me
pretty
wrestle.
Much had to
so
wrestle.
All my brothers, I have 2 brothers. They were both excellent wrestlers, and they stayed with it in high school. One brother, Bobby, is the Cuesta Community College athletic director. He was a national champion wrestler and valedictorian of his class and all of that stuff. I chose, when high school started, I said I got to either play basketball or wrestle. Well, my best friend was Tom Izzo, right, at Michigan State. So I said, we're going to play basketball together, right? So I got into the wrestling stuff as a freshman. But as a kid I did.
I must tell you, my favorite clip I wish that we could find it. I couldn't find it. I don't know if it was NFL Films, but you're on the sidelines with Steve Young. And I know you know the story during a very important moment, and Steve's listening, and the tension, you could cut it with a knife. And you looked at him and said, "You having fun?" And I went,
said,
"My God, is that what it's all about?"
I said, "Is this fun or what?" And it was just raw, organic. I was like I was talking to my kid or my wife or my friend, and it was in the middle of a game, and it was. You got to have fun when you're a coach, right? I mean, there's enough pressure, or there's enough criticism, and there's enough of all of that, even more now with social media, right? You better find a way to enjoy it. Winning or losing, you better find a way to enjoy the journey, the challenge, the ups and the downs. And obviously, you know, when Steve Young was on the team and Jerry Rice and that bunch, it was much more fun coaching then, you know, when you're winning and having fun, than it is even a tough season. But you better find a way to enjoy even a tough season somehow.
Well, that having been said, and we'll get back to coaching in a moment, when it comes to the NFL Network, is this fun?
Yeah, it's fun. I 10 years now.
Tell me the difference in hours.
Well, you know, last year even the year before, I was telling my wife, I said, I got to get back into coaching. This is killing me, because my schedule would be, because we started Thursday night football, right? With the network, and we did it for the first 9 years, and we traveled. So you travel on Wednesday and most games are on the East Coast, right? Eastern time zone. Just travel Wednesday, do your meetings and shows and everything. Thursday, fly back here on Friday, and then Saturday morning, boom, I'm right back down to the studio in Los Angeles for the weekend, and then I come back home, and I have a studio in my home. I do shows from my house on Monday, so I have 1 day off a week, Tuesday, and that's a prep day, you know. You got to get ready for all of these interviews or XOs or whatever you do. So I was in a hotel 3-4 nights a week and on an airplane 4 days a week, and it was grinding. It's at least when you're coaching, you sleep in your own bed. Yeah. There's only 8 trips.
Albeit 2 hours a night, but at least
it's not much, but you sleep. Yeah. So I mean, it was now they pulled us off the road on Thursday nights. We do all of our pre and post game shows from the LA studios, you know, at the network. We don't go to the site, so that kind of saves some travel, makes it a little bit easier this year. But it's a grinder if you're you know, in television during the fall. The off season's different. That's what's different.
Yeah.
You know, I actually have a life in the off season.
You can actually get the handicap down in the off season.
You know what? I quit golfing too, though, a long time ago, because I'm terrible. But travel, see my kids. I hate being an empty nester.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point. Yeah.
Because all my kids, you know, they went to schools around here. All their friends. The house was always Grand Central Station. Yeah. I loved it. But our baby, Brielle, is a junior at Boston College. Okay. She couldn't have picked a further place to go to school. We love it, though. She'll be studying abroad next semester, but they're gone. Yeah. So you go from 90 miles an hour to 0. It's like
having conversations with your wife again. And I
was like, we got to talk now.
And I went when the kids left. I went, so how you been?
And you are. So we do a lot of traveling to see these kids. Even during.
Can we go see the kids?
Yeah, my wife just came back from Boston, and I know she's going again in 2 more weeks. And so I have one son, Tyler, who is associate athletic director at the University of Maryland. Okay. And he has oversight of 11 sports, and he's busy. He's married. He's got one on the way. All of that. He's doing great, but he's on the other side of the country. Sure. My son Adam is in New York City, and working and living there and loving it. And so one son's in San Diego, and so they're gone. And I'm just kind of hoping and praying they kind of show up and come back here at some point.
You and I are pretty close to the same age, although you won't enter the autumn of your years for a couple of weeks, I understand. So you're gonna.
So you know my birthday, I'm going to be turning 60, huh?
60.
So on the network every year.
That's right.
Last year they gave me diapers and Geritol and some of that stuff on the air. Yeah, it was good. Yeah.
Don't throw them out.
Keep them.
But when you and I were growing up, and really well into our adulthoods, there was no NFL network, no MLB network. Now there's NHL, certainly the Golf Channel that Arnold started and NBC owns.
when they started ESPN.
Did you say to yourself, is there really going to be a market 24 hours a day?
Well, you know, ESPN, when did they start? I don't know, 45 years ago, whatever that it was. And it was going to be all sports, an all sports network. And people were saying, you're going to have programming for just sports all day long. Just sports, really? No news, no traffic. No. And obviously now ESPN has what? ESPN News, ESPNU, ESPN Classic, ESPN2, okay? And then every sport, the Golf Channel, everybody, every sport pretty much has its own network. Every conference, think about it.
Well, you're right.
The Big Ten, the Pac-12, the SEC. Some schools have their own. University of Texas, Notre Dame, BYU, they have their own network, all right? And it's because there's such an appetite for sports fans to follow their sport or their alma mater or whatever that is. These networks wouldn't stay alive and in business if there weren't eyeballs on it. And so there is, and it's amazing how sports is such an addiction in the U.S. And you know, you go over to Europe, and we've all traveled there and this and that, and you watch soccer, and soccer's such a world kind of a sport, right? But the variety of sports that we have in the U.S. with men and women is off the charts, and there's such an appetite for it.
The other thing we tried to find was a clip from the 1975 National Championship game when you were quarterbacking Northern Michigan. Those must be all tied up in the courts because there are no clips of it.
Oh, I got clips.
You got clips?
You should have said, bring some clips.
We're going to take a break. We're with Steve Mariucci. We're going to talk. We're going to bring up the concussion word in the next segment and talk about his future and what he's got planned, and bring you up to date on what's going on. You're watching Talk of the Town. I'm Jacobi, and we'll see you in a minute.
I'm Sal Pizarro, the Around Town columnist for the San Jose Mercury News, and you're watching KCAT TV.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town. I'm Mike Jacobi. My guest is Steve Mariucci. We were talking when we broke about National Championship, 1975. I'm doing Cosell. 1975, Northern Michigan University. Who are you playing?
Well, we played Western Kentucky then. But let me just tell you about it back then, okay? Let's just.
You had the helmets, right?
They were not leather either, Jacobi. So listen. So back then in the 70s, there were only two divisions. There was Division I and Division II, okay? University or college division, they call it a couple different things. But Division II, which we won the national championship, and that's kind of cool. I'll tell you why.
You were quarterback.
Because the year before we were 0-10.
Really?
We are the only team ever in the history of the world to go winless to a national championship, okay, in any sport.
Any sport.
Look it up. Look it up. Anyway, but it was different then because it was the Division II. You know who it included? We had to beat Boise State in the semi. Boise State, they're pretty good. We had to beat teams like Delaware, Central Michigan, Troy, Western Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky, all those kinds of teams that many are now Division I.
Right.
And then all the others, the North Dakota States and Montana States of the world are Division I AA, right, FCS, and then Division II. Well, no, Division II back then was really strong. There was a lot of schools, very, very competitive. So I remind everybody of that. It was better back then than Division II. So yeah, we were lucky enough to win it, and then the next year we were pretty good too, and then we got beat.
Well, then it's a matter of the pro scouts beating a path to your door, and you make the move of 2 weeks in Canada.
So yeah, I played 2 weeks
That's
in the pros.
right,
I played 2 weeks in the pros. Canada, that's pros.
Absolutely.
And so
That's
Sam
forward moving.
Rutigliano, he was the coach of the Cleveland Browns at the time, and he offered me a free agent contract, and I'm sure it was only because he's Italian and I'm Italian. That's
right.
the really the reason.
The vowel factor.
And because I was an option quarterback. We threw, yes, but I was more of an option quarterback. And so I went to Canada and I didn't make it. So I was in coaching before that anyway. I actually started coaching as soon as I was done at Northern Michigan, and then I asked permission from my head coach, can I try it in the NFL or the CFL? He said, yeah, come back if you don't make it. I'll be back in a couple weeks. And so that's when I started my coaching profession a long time ago, 40 years ago.
Did you coach under Walsh?
I didn't coach under Walsh, but when I was the head coach at the Niners,
Right.
Bill was the president. President, whatever he was, GM, whatever he was. He came back, so it was so much fun.
I'm guessing that was a better relationship with your general manager than others. Can I phrase that correctly?
The first thing that Bill recommended me for that job, and I mean he was in my camp from day one.
And what a good guy.
Yeah, I mean he was on such a pedestal.
Yeah.
And he deserved it. And so the first day when I showed up at the Niners, I came from the University of California, and he cornered me. He said, all right, here's the deal. You just got off a fast treadmill over there at Cal, and you just jumped on, you're going to be jumping on to one even faster here. You need to take your wife and your family on a vacation. I went, like, what, right now? Yeah. He goes, yes, you need to get freshened up and go on a vacation. And that was the last thing that I thought he would say to me. It's like, I thought he might say, get to work. You know what I mean? But he was great, and he wasn't meddling. He wasn't like this or that. You got to do this, you got to do that. He would watch. He would answer questions if I asked him, but he was always there.
I would think that whereas you wouldn't want a general manager to be meddling, but there must be a great deal of security in the fact that Yoda is up there and you need to answer questions.
Yeah, and he wasn't up there, because he stepped away my first year a little bit, and Carmen Policy was still there.
Sure.
But if you recall, you could write a book about all this. My first year with the Niners in '97, Carmen Policy and Eddie DeBartolo hired me. Yeah. I remember when they came over to the University of California in a limo, and they picked me up from the football offices, and we went down to President Tien's, the president of the university, his office with the AD, and we sat there, and they said, all right, we want your coach. And and I had only been there 1 year, and it was bizarre. I wasn't expecting it. I did an interview for the job. It was really weird, to be honest.
Now, do they put the money in a brown paper bag, or is that in a suitcase at that point?
I didn't see any of that. And so, but I do know in my contract, all coaches in college have a buyout contract, meaning you can't just go over there. Yeah. If somebody else takes you, you got to buy them out and give the school, some money. So because they should, right? Well, there was a buyout in my contract, and Mr. D says, we will do the buyout ×2 and more than that, if whatever it takes. He wanted to work. He didn't want to upset the Cal fan base or the president or the university.
Sure.
And he was very generous to the university to steal their coach. And so it was all quite.
And he had a good run.
Yeah, it was fun. It was amazing. But you got to remember then, after 1 year, Eddie DeBartolo's gone. Yeah. Carmen Policy, after a year and a half, he's gone. He went to Cleveland as a 10% owner and president over there. Dwight Clark, our GM, gone to Cleveland. Marketing, gone. There was nobody left in the building my second year. There was nobody.
Was Walsh still president?
Well, see, Bill had left. When I first got there, he was there for a few weeks, and then he was gone.
Okay.
So we had to hire a general manager. We didn't have one. So we hired John McVay.
Right.
John McVay is as good as it gets.
Nice guy.
Oh my God, he was the voice of reason. He was the wind beneath your wings. And for Bill, for George Seifert, for me, for everybody, John McVay. So we brought him back, thank God, because he had to help me with the salary cap and with the contracts and all. There was nobody left in the building. And then we eventually needed also a president too, and then we brought Bill Walsh back as the president, and he had worked obviously with John McVay before, so we became whole again. But it was the second year, there was nobody in the front office. I'd come in after a win, nobody pat you on the back. You come in after a loss, nobody there yelling at you. I mean, it was nothing. It was like a ghost town in that.
You signing the contract with the Lions, which at the time was the largest contract, I believe, in history. for a head coach, and most of that's documented pretty well, so I don't want to go into that deeply. But overall, what you walked away with was knowledge that's helped you going through something
man.
like that?
When you coach for 30 years, and you're going to have some great years and great days, and you're going to have some down years and down days, and you're going to have everything in between. That's the beauty of coaching, because whether you're a high school coach or college or Pop Warner, it doesn't matter. Coaching is teaching, and that's what I went to college for. Tom Izzo and I, our influencers growing up were our parents and our coaches and some teachers. Okay, so that's why I went to school to be a teacher.
Yeah.
I did. Our intention was to be a teacher and a coach at the high school level, because that's what I loved growing up. And it didn't happen. I got on to college earlier than expected, and then whatever. But you have to enjoy the journey. You have to enjoy knowing that you can impact kids, whether it's at the college level. You got these 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that are trying to figure out who they want to be, what they want to be. Very impressionable age in terms of their futures. They don't all play pro football. Very few do. Yeah. And even in the pros, I mean, they're not all like Steve Young was 38 years old, or when I was in Green Bay, Reggie White, who had a family. They're not all like that. Most of these kids in the pros are single guys, right? Under 26 years old.
Living the life, yeah.
They're living the life of football, and they're trying to figure out, who am I? How do I earn a living? And where do I go from here? And so, I have no regrets. No regrets whatsoever. There was some great times and some tough times. You're not home much.
Yeah.
That's one of the toughest things.
You're at a point now, and you have been. I know since you left coaching. Whenever there is a rumor of a head coaching job or a college coaching job, and you change planes somewhere near that vicinity, you're like an Elvis sighting. He says, "Oh, he's coming here." I imagine that's it's kind of endearing that people are talking about that.
It's flattering.
It's flattering. That's what I was looking for. But any interest at all?
No, I kind of hesitated there. Didn't I?
I know you did.
I've had some interest to go back as a head coach in the NFL several times. I've had some calls to go back into college several times, and I've respectfully declined. What I did was, here's kind of my weird philosophy. When you're younger and you're trying to climb the ladder and get to where you want to be someday, you make professional decisions. Meaning, okay, do I go from an assistant coach at Green Bay Packers coaching Brett Favre, right, which is a lot of fun, you're going to win, and then but I took the Cal job because it was professionally the right thing to do. If you want to be a head coach, you got to go do it if you have that opportunity. Or do you move your family? Do you bounce from one because of a raise or a title or whatever that is? Those are professional decisions. Later on in my career, and this is mainly in the last 10 years after Detroit, I made family decisions. They're not the same. They're not the same. No. Every time I had a chance, a phone call from an owner to come and be their head coach, I would go, all right, family, huddle up. Yeah. I'd get back with you. I have to talk to my family. Yeah. And I'd get the whole family, and I'd say, we're voting. We have a chance to go here and coach. Who wants to do this? Should we do it? Should I think about it? How does it impact? Vote. And I would get no, 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 no. So I would respectfully call them back and say, I can't do it. It's not right. It's not right for my family right now. Because I moved my wife 18 times.
Wow.
Then again, there's good and bad. You got friends in every city in the world, it seems, and that you remain friends with. And you learn about the South. And I coached in Florida and in Michigan and Wisconsin and Kentucky and Southern California. And it's kind of cool to learn about different parts of this great country. But you get tired. Wives get tired of moving. Kids get tired of moving.
Let's do a little current events. Because you were at USC. And the problems they've gone through recently with their coaching staff or with their head coach. Obviously, your point earlier about social media and the pressure and the target on your back is even bigger than it was 20 years ago now, with the media being what it is. I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. Is Pat Hayden, are they handling that the way you would have handled that if you were an athletic director?
Pat had an episode at the Notre Dame game before, you know, and I hope he's okay.
Yeah.
He's been under some great stress, obviously, as an AD, and they've got to hire the right people to run their sports. And Steve Sarkisian, I just hope he gets well.
That's the important thing. Yeah.
That's the important thing, because he's a good man. He's a good coach. We know he's a good coach. He's got to get healthy, and that's way more important than coaching a football team. And so I just keep my fingers crossed that all works out. There would be great interest from around this country for that USC job, because they're finally out of all those being light on scholarships. They're getting out of that now, and they'll be very, very competitive. And it's got, as you know, such great tradition. It was always, other than the big game, when I was coaching at Cal twice, the USC game is just a monster game.
There are, and as a neophyte, there are three problems among others facing, to me, the NFL in terms of concussions, in terms of domestic abuse, and I happen to think in terms of DraftKings and that whole movement. What do you think about that? I know you were saying off camera. Tell me about what you're doing with the concussion and committee.
So as soon as I leave you,
right,
I'm going to go home, and we have a player safety advisory panel for the NFL, a conference call today. We do this once a month. We'll meet in person at the Hall of Fame, but we study the data, the injury data, all right? And our committee with Ronnie Lott, John Madden, Ernie Accorsi, Roger Goodell, the commissioner, some attorneys, some doctors on this committee. And we study the injury trends. And then based on what we know, we make recommendations to the competition committee. We have changed some things, or we have been instrumental in suggesting, moving the kickoff from the.
Now, does that go to an ownership vote, or how do those get implemented?
Yeah, it's a lengthy process.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, the competition committee's got to deem it worthy of discussion and a vote, and then it'll usually go to ownership vote and to change certain rules. Sometimes depends on what it is. Yeah. But for example, moving the kickoff from the 30 to 35, what did we do? We created more touchbacks. Why did we do that? Because the most dangerous play in football is the kickoff.
Right.
All right? And we don't let anybody have a big wedge anymore, because the big guys are getting hit and they're getting knocked out. And so we've eliminated we've reduced concussions on kickoffs by 50%.
That's great.
And over the last 3 years, because we've been doing a lot of this, staying off the quarterback's helmet, right? Defenseless receivers, all those rules. We've reduced concussions every year by, now it's by like 33%. And that's progress. Is it perfect? No. But it's reducing our most serious injury really is concussions. That's the biggest concern right now.
So it's a monthly conference call, and you've got it coming up today. And I must tell you, if you're going to have a conversation about concussions, there's no better prologue than the conversation with me going into it.
I know it. I will mention that we spoke today.
Absolutely.
And then we're talking about the other injuries, and we've recommended, there's less padded practices during the season, and there's a trickle-down effect in the colleges and hopefully high schools. You know why it's been hard in high schools to get things changed? Because every state has its own governing body. Texas is different than Florida, is different than Michigan, and different than California. Some have spring ball, tackle practices, some won't. And so there are a lot of different high school rules by state.
Well, growing up in Midwest, you played padded and tackle in 5th grade.
Yeah, I did, but
they
you know what?
They don't do that out here. Because I grew up in Illinois, we went through that.
Yeah, there's Pop Warner, and that's up for discussion too, because
a discussion that needs to be addressed.
Kid gets a concussion at age 10. Yeah. That's not a good start. And so, we're studying that too. But we have these youth football programs now that require the coach to be certified. All right, you can't have one of those guys that just try to relive his childhood and smashes the kids together for 2 hours. No, they've got to learn how to tackle with your head up and keep the head out of the game and all those sort of things. That's just head stuff. We're talking about conditioning and hydrating and all the other things that go with it too. We're trying to make the game safer. We will never be perfect because it is such a collision sport, but we're trying to provide information and data and know-how to all the coaches all the way through to make this more doable, more acceptable for moms.
Yeah.
For moms.
Domestic abuse, that's something that, I mean, that from a societal standpoint, that really hadn't been, I mean, the NFL really mirrors in terms of it being brought to the forefront.
Just about every social issue,
Yeah,
it mirrors
sure.
society pretty much, doesn't it? And so,
Is the NFL handling that well? Were you proud of what happened as being a member of it? Not of what happened, the abuse, but are you proud of how they handled it?
you know, Roger Goodell has a tough job
Oh, sure, yeah.
because he's trying to be strict and he's trying to be tough and he's trying to minimize whether it's domestic abuse or substance abuse or all the things that can happen to anyone out there. And some of the penalties have been not strong enough. Some of the penalties after the Ray Rice thing with 2-game suspension, it was like, what? Just 2 games for that? We saw the video in the elevator, and then
4 games for deflate gate.
and then the equity with it. But it's a tough job. All I know is he and his staff are trying to keep the integrity of the league at a high standard, and that's not easy. That's not easy.
Nope.
You know, you're talking about. Let's face it. You're talking about guys that are wired, right?
Absolutely.
To be tough and aggressive and play a sport, and you know that's what we expect on the field and off the field. We expect them to be gentlemen, and we do that in high school. We do that in college. We do that in every sport, men's and women's. And sometimes, and then you mentioned the social media. Anytime somebody missteps, boom! I mean, it's out there. Everybody knows about it. 3 minutes later,
Which may be a blessing to an extent that people have to be watching themselves a little more. But what's interesting, Coach, is that the locker room talk, the classic locker room talk from a coach, is really an on switch to the players when they go onto the field. But there's no off switch when you come off the field. You come off, there's no letting down. You still come off, and it's like, I guess, doing an entertainment gig. You come off, you're wired. You're I'm going to go straight to bed. No, I'm still on edge. Still got adrenaline running. It was something that needs to be addressed. You need to be careful around people at that point.
You go from the game, which is the complete get up, excited, and combative state that you can possibly be in, to come on down after that,
Right.
okay? In fact, in the locker rooms, after a game's over, there's what we call a 20-minute
Like a decompression,
cool down
yeah.
period. Well,
20 minutes, great,
and
thanks.
so that cool down period is a time where the guys start getting undressed and changed or showered or whatever. It's a time where the coach talks to the team. The coach always talks to the team, win or lose. You kind of give them some reminders about maybe what to say or not to say to the media. You know, everybody's going to have their own voice, but you try to circle the wagons a little bit. And then after that's done, then the media just pours in like a flood, all right? Men and women in the locker room, all right? That's how it is. And you just hope that guys have calmed down enough to be sensible. And so you saw Aaron Andrews' interview with Richard Sherman a couple years ago after the Niner game, and he went cuckoo, and she was just like, "Whoa!" It's like, but the adrenaline is up still.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's why it's a tough thing to do for these kids, these players. They're not all
And for
kids.
you guys as well.
You got to go from combat mode to civilian mode, like in a matter of minutes. And say the right things, and do the right things, and that's the integrity of the league. We expect that.
In our last couple of minutes, I want to talk a little bit about your charity events and get the word out on that. Maybe people can learn a little more. You've got the bocce tournament. You do it with my buddy Poach over it. Do you do that here in town?
The Madden Mariucci
The Madden
one.
Mariucci one.
18 years we've been doing
But
this.
in Los Gatos.
So when
you
I
used
was
to do it in Livermore, or do you?
okay, so when I was coaching the Niners,
Okay.
I wanted to do a charity event. I did not want to do another golf event.
Right.
There's 7,000 golf
there
events.
is,
No offense. So I talked to Tom Albanese over there at Campo de Bocce, and he was just opening up that restaurant. So we go, we're going to do a bocce ball fundraiser. So it started when I was with the Niners. It was awesome. Celebrities, you name it, they were there. And I would give my team off practice. I said, all right, you got a choice. You're going to go to the bocce event or you're going to practice. Right. It was unanimous bocce. So everybody's there. And so we started raising money. And then when I moved to Detroit, I did the same thing at Palazzo de Bacci over there, big new venue. Tony Battaglia owns it, and it's indoor courts, outdoor, big restaurant, and I started doing it in Detroit. So when I was there, I called up John Madden, because he thinks he's a good bocce ball player. He's really average. And I said, John, why don't you add your name to my tournament, and we can kind of Mad Mariucci this, because I want to keep it going when I'm away. He said, yeah. So it's still going, 18 years now. We've raised $5 million.
Is it one charity you work with? Or?
No, so we've changed over the years. We've been Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. We've done, Los Gatos Police Department. We've done a lot of different things, but it's kind of, now it's Special Olympics. We cut a $100,000 check for Special Olympics. It goes also to the Mariucci Family Foundation, all right? And we support Down syndrome football camps and hospitality houses for hospitals and some of those things, and juvenile diabetes and diabetes research. And so it's kind of dwarfed into that. Those are the charities that
Do those
benefit.
choices come from any personal challenges?
Yes and no. So Tom Albanese, the owner, John Madden and I, so we run this tournament, and it's bare bones. We don't pay for people coming in or hotels or anything. People come there on their own to just donate their time. That's why it's so awesome. So it's very efficiently run. And so after we pay for the spaghetti, all right, we have some food there. It's awesome. We divvy it up 3 ways. Tom Albanese can take his third and go anywhere he wants. Okay. He's the one that goes 100% Special Olympics. Okay? Mine goes 100% to the Mariucci Family Foundation, which I told you it was our Down syndrome football camps that we've started to spread through the country.
Did you have someone in your family?
So our first child, when Gail and I went to Louisville, Kentucky to coach at the U of L, we lost our first child with a genetic birth defect, okay? It wasn't Down syndrome. Down syndrome is trisomy 21. What our son was born with was trisomy 18, okay? A little bit different, but still a genetic birth defect. So I guess we have some association with that. John Madden, is close to juvenile diabetes, because I believe one of his grandsons is going through that. So yes, there's some reasons why we steer money in certain directions. There's so many charities that are deserving. It's always a tough decision. Why not breast cancer? Why not domestic violence? Why not AIDS? There's so many, but we had to get focused and narrowed down to a certain 4 or 5, and that's what we've done.
For those folks watching who were certain I was going to say Jazz on the Plaza at one point, I didn't, just so we're clear on that, looking for money. Talk to me, do you have a 5-year plan? When you went to the NFL Network, did you say, I'm going to try this out?
Yeah.
And just keeps getting better?
So when I get fired in Detroit,
all right, let's go back to Detroit then. You signed a humongous contract in Detroit. Since now we have time, we'll open this gap. Yeah, Matt Millen, who was a friend of yours, did he recommend you for the job?
Yeah.
Okay, he recommended
me for the job. He was trying to get me 2 years prior to that, and then I was available, and then I went. I went. And I didn't go because of the money, although it was good.
It didn't hurt.
It's my home state.
Right.
My mom was going through cancer. I wanted to be back there. Izzo's my best friend. I had family back there. They had never won since the 50s. I mean, there was a million reasons to go back there and see if you could turn it around. So I did, and I didn't get it done. It's that simple. Yeah. Okay. So when I got let go, when coaches get fired, and we just had Joe Philbin get fired over in Miami, and the media goes, yeah, he's fired, next guy up, that kind of stuff. And they don't think about the families. They don't think about the assistant coaches that are going to have to find new schools for their kids and move on and all that kind of stuff. It's not fun.
Do most contracts have a dismissal clause? Or if you sign a 5-year contract, they've got to pay you?
Well, are you talking about coaches or players?
Coaches.
Coaches, depends on who your agent is and what kind of deal you can strike, right? And so mine had an offset clause, which means if I were to go work someplace else and get paid a similar amount of money, they would be off the hook. If I got half of it somewhere else, they would be responsible for up to. So it's called an offset. So anyway, so I went to work for the NFL Network. But I was so distraught. I was so bummed out and disappointed and dejected after losing my job because you feel like you failed.
It's a public failure too.
Whew. I went there with there was failing was not an option, you know, and then I failed, and so I didn't leave the house for a month.
Yeah. You did a Brian Wilson.
I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just was like turning into a recluse. And then Eric Weinberger, who is one of the big dogs at the NFL Network, calls me up and said, "Hey, Mooch, what are you doing?" I go, "Nothing. What are you doing?" He says, "We want you to work the Super Bowl." I go, "Wait a minute. The Super Bowl is in Detroit this year."
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So is when Pittsburgh and Seattle played in the Super Bowl in Detroit. I go, "Wait a minute. You want me to work the Super Bowl in the stadium?" I just got fired from that, Eric. He goes, "I know it. It'll do you some good. You need to get out of the house."
About getting back on the horse. Yeah.
You need to get back out there. So he kind of twisted my arm and talked me into doing a couple shows that week, and then the Super Bowl. I did the pre and post game show from the field and all that kind of stuff. So that was the start of at least thinking about this career.
You had I watched an interview with you and Rich Eisen where you kind of summed up the de-evolution of a relationship by using the metaphor of a Gatorade bottle.
What?
About where you and Matt, the first year, you'd have a bottle of Gatorade. Can you tell us, you know what I'm talking about?
Where did you see that?
And you, I don't know where I saw it. And you said,
Matt and I
tell
were
the
really,
story.
we
You
were
were
tight.
so close
We
to
were
that.
close. We were, his kids wrestled, so did mine, and we just liked each other, same kind of age. And so, anyway, I'm with him in Detroit for the first year, and it's like, take a break, blow the horn, take a break. Gatorade, here. Matt, you want some? Yeah. We're drinking out of the same Gatorade bottle. The next year, it was like, take a break. All right, here's mine. There's yours, right there. And then the last year was like, I'm not even standing by you for this break. I'm over on the other side. Get your own. Things change over time.
Excuse me, that is funny.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, we don't drink out of the same bottle anymore.
We don't even drink on. Hey, on the other sideline. That's fun. Hey, so 5 years from now, I mean, you happy with the you want to stay?
Oh yeah, I love it. I think I want to be one of those guys. You know who are a couple of my heroes in this profession?
No.
Lee Corso.
Okay.
I worked with Lee Corso in the Orlando Renegades, the USFL. I coached with him.
Okay.
He was crazy then. He's still crazy. I love him to death. He's 80 years old, and he's a rock star when he goes on campus.
Absolutely.
On game
College
day.
game day is
oh my God!
phenomenal.
Puts the hat on, and everybody goes crazy and all that. Last week he had this little Michigan State hat, and he couldn't get it on. And this game's at Michigan, right? And then all of a sudden he throws it away, and he puts that big Michigan hat, and they go crazy. So, or Dick Vitale. And he's so good at what he does. And these guys are 80, 76 years old. And I've said to my wife, I go, you know what? I kind of want to do that. I want to be the guy that stays in it a long time and is knowledgeable about the sport because you coached it, but is entertaining and fun to watch. And I said, I think I like that path.
It's funny, we had Roger Maltby here, and I asked him, having become an icon, how do you like it? He goes, I don't know when it happened, but I'm sure enjoying the ride.
Good, yeah. Yeah, it's a fun. You get to stay. You're not front center, but you talk about the sport that you love, and that you're really familiar with. Really, coached for 30 years and now 10 years in this. So for 40 years, after I graduated, it's been all football, and so to be able to say that you get to work or talk about or play or whatever that is, a sport that you love, and they pay you for it.
Right.
I mean, that's all we can ask for.
Promise me you'll come back after the season. Come visit us again after Super Bowl.
It's a long commute.
It's a long commute.
Over the hill.
Over the hill, all the way to Montezurino. We'd love to see you again.
Yeah, enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
And good luck on this entering 60 years old. The prunes are in my glove compartment. If you need
What happens at 60? Because at 50, you get an ARP card, but at 60, see, I got a fake ID.
You still get the
I got a fake
sunshine
ID.
dinner.
I'm 48.
Yeah, you still get the sunset dinner, but now you can ride buses for free. So it's
Free buses.
This is a nice.
I'm going to do that just to say I did.
Steve Mariucci, it's a joy. Good seeing you, my friend.
Thanks for having me on.
That's Talk of the Town. Until next time, I'm Jacobi. I'll see you soon.